Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are talking about Markiplier's directorial debut, Iron Lung. But before we get into it, I just want to say once again, I am sorry for not having a microphone. I broke my microphone last week, and then because of the snowstorm, I had to move out of my dorm, so I haven't had a chance to get a new one. Plus, my PC is still at my dorm, so I don't really have a way to record on my PC, so I'm having to do all these videos recorded on my phone with spare gameplay footage that I find on my laptop. So that's why you're not seeing Iron Lung gameplay right now, and you're probably seeing Minecraft gameplay. So I want to apologize for that, but regardless, we are back. I'm glad to be back. I haven't made one of these since Monday when I saw Mercy, and in today's video, we are talking about Iron Lung. This is Markiplier's directorial debut. It was also written and stars him, and this was one of my most anticipated films of the year because I was super interested to see how Markiplier, a YouTuber who I pretty much grew up with playing Five Nights at Freddy's, was going to adapt a video game that had very, very few and far between bits of lore into a full 2-hour-long feature film, as well as how he would do as an actor, writer, and director all at the same time in a film. So, without further ado, I'm just going to get into it. If you're new around here, you can check out my letterbox in the description. I do movie reviews and everything there, and you can find my 2026 ranked list where I'm ranking every single film that every single new release film that I watched this year, as I'm on my journey to rank all of them and eventually make a big long video where I talk about my rankings. So if you're interested in that, check that out in the description. You can also check out the rest of my channel where I do the video version of the reviews of them. They're usually longer and a little bit more in depth, so if you want to check those out, check out the rest of my channel. But without further ado, let's get right into the video. So, Iron Lung is finally here. It's been a long time coming. I think this movie got teased like over a year ago or something like that. It was one of the reasons that Markiplier couldn't do the Five Nights at Freddy's movie all the way back in 2023. So, this movie's been a long time coming, and I am finally happy to announce that I watched it, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed this film. I do have a few issues with it, and we're going to talk about those first, but we're going to talk about all of it. We're going to talk about the negatives, the mixed, and the positives, but I want to start off with the negatives to get them out of the way. So, stuff that I didn't like, and this is probably going to be an issue for a lot of people, and it doesn't necessarily bother me all that much, but it's something that I notice, and it's that when you make a movie about a guy in a submarine by himself for 2 hours long, and you walk into the theater, you should expect to be as entertained as you would watching a man in a submarine for 2 hours. Because that is exactly what you're getting out of this film. I am all for slow burn. I think slow burn is very well done most of the time, and as long as the ending pays it off, it's fantastic. I thought the ending paid off very, very well in this film, but I do have to admit, if you are not a slow burn person, this movie is going to lose you in the first 30 minutes. You're going to be tapped out, and by the time we get to the ending, you're going to be questioning why I even watched this movie. So, it is an extremely, extremely slow film. And I like that, but the first, 45 to 50 minutes of this movie are literally just Markiplier doing mundane tasks in a submarine. So if you're not really interested in watching a dude fumble around in a submarine for 50 minutes, you're probably not going to enjoy this movie. So I'm just going to throw that out there. I went and saw this with a couple of my friends, and one thing I noticed is that everybody around me in the theater, my friends, the people around us, were all very much in the first 50 minutes. They were not as locked in as I was, because I was honed into the tension and the sound design of the scenes, and it seemed like everybody else around me was a little bit out of it because it was moving at such a snail's pace. So if you're a pacing person and you can't handle the slow pace, this movie is going to kill you. On the topic of sound design, I want to transition into my big mixed with this movie because I'm not sure if this was just an issue with my theater in particular or if this is an overall issue with the film, so I'm putting this in the mixed category, and that is going to be the sound mixing. The sound design is fantastic in this movie, and I'll talk about that in a second, but the sound mixing in this film was sometimes very, very incoherent. And I do have to admit, my theater was very quiet. Like, I could, literally every time I picked up my drink or somebody around me was eating popcorn or opening a bag or something, it would overwhelm the entire theater. So I'm not sure if this movie is just unnecessarily quiet, because there were moments where it was literally just Simon standing there talking. Simon is Markiplier's character. talking, and I just could not hear what he was saying because it was so quiet. And in terms of the sound mixing, when there were multiple overlapping voices because of hallucinogenic moments and stuff like that, I'm trying not to spoil the film. Markiplier has said in like interviews and stuff to be kind and not spoil, so avoiding spoilers. But when there's a lot of voices overlapping in like, in stuff, and it's a psychological horror film, when there's a lot of voices overlapping from like the psychological stuff, it gets very, very hard to understand what the most prominent voice is saying. And I'm assuming that if there's a voice that is the most prominent, you're supposed to be able to hear what the words they're saying are. So I feel like I missed out on a lot of crucial information, mainly about Simon as a character, not so much what was actually happening in the film. So that's kind of a big, for me. Maybe if I watch this movie again on digital, like I watched it at home with headphones and I could turn it up as loud as I needed to, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But in the theater, this movie was very quiet, and then when it needed to be loud, it kind of missed the mark of mixing all of the different sounds together. But as for the sound design is fantastic. The actual settling of the submarine sounds really good. The way that like the creature will drift past it and you'll hear like the waves or like the ship will kind of rock is really awesome. All of the sounds of like pulling the levers and the buttons and like the oxygen meter and the depth meter is all really cool. All of that's really great. And what ties directly, at least in my opinion, into the sound design is the visual design and the just how good the actual iron lung itself looks. If you don't know, the iron lung itself in this film is a practical set. It's set up on like a hydraulic machine. It's like a metal box in a hydraulic machine, and it's twisting and contorting, and it's moving via like a controller. It's like a remote control car. And Markiplier's, stunt double or whoever, when they actually would rock the boat, I'm assuming that the stunt double would actually fall over and like fall out of the chair and stuff. And that's why in scenes where that happens, it looks so good in the film. So practically, all of the practical stuff looks fantastic. All of the CGI stuff, because remember, this is still a horror film, and it's actually shockingly an eldritch horror film, which I'll talk on that more in a little bit. But this film, visually, even with the VFX and the CGI, looks really, really good. Markiplier paid for this entire movie himself, so it's shocking that the CGI looks so good. There's only really one instance that I was like, oh, that CGI does not look great, but it never really took me out of the film. And by the end of the movie, and especially I would say the middle act CGI, all looks absolutely fantastic, but the final act CGI looks great as well. So CGI in general looks great. Shocking how good it looks considering this is an indie film paid for by Markiplier himself. So all of that's pretty cool. Cinematography-wise, because I just wanted to throw this in here, this movie looks absolutely fantastic. I'm not sure who did the camera work off the top of my head. I know Mark directed it, obviously, but in general, I think the cinematography looks fantastic. Whoever did the camera work needs a raise because it looks really good. For me personally, I like intricately detailed shots, and I think when you're kind of in a slow burn film, if you're doing these detailed shots of all of the intricate design of your interior set design, especially when you have a set design that looks this good, it's really interesting. When you'll see like blood dripping off of like the speaker or like the intercom, or like blood coming out of like the PC, it all looks really good, and the shots that they use to frame it look really fantastic. So cinematography wise, knocked it out of the park. VFX wise, knocked it out of the park. Loved all of that. Last thing I want to say, going back to that eldritch horror thing, we don't get a lot of eldritch horror movies, and when we do, they're usually not very good because they're cheaply made and the CGI can't afford how good it needs to look to sell the idea. So when we do get a good one, I want to gloat about it, and I would say Iron Lung is a good eldritch horror movie. So that made me very happy that we got a good eldritch horror movie, because I like eldritch horror. We don't see a lot of it, and like I said, when we do, it's not great. So glad we got a good one. But now I want to talk about the two big elephants in the room with this film. Probably the two things that when you hear directorial debut and acting in a feature film debut, as well as video game adaptation, the two questions that immediately come to your mind are, is this a good video game adaptation, and how good is Markiplier at being an actor? So I want to toggle the video game adaptation question first, and let me get this out there. After the major disappointment that Return to Silent Hill was, if you didn't see my video on that, you should go check it out because I had a lot to say about that movie. But after how disappointed I was that one of my favorite games of all time got adapted into a catastrophe, I was very worried the Iron Lung film would not be a good video game adaptation, even though I have literally no connection to the Iron Lung video game whatsoever. And I'm happy to report that I think this film honestly does a lot of things that every single video game adaptation needs to make as a fundamental thing in their films from now on. And that is, they need to expand upon the pre-existing lore in an interesting, well-designed, and significantly more intricate way than the video game ever did on screen. Markiplier manages to take a video game that has very little and few and far between intricate lore and takes it and makes a massive universe out of it that has so much depth, ingenuity, and intrigue into simply what is in this ocean, but not even just what is in this ocean, what happened to all of the planets. If you don't know what Iron Lung's about, you're probably confused. I'm not going to do a recap on Iron Lung because I don't know enough about it myself, but in this film, he takes pretty much every little bit of pre-existing lore from Iron Lung that is somewhat kind of confusing and meddling and makes it into something interesting. Now, where there comes a caveat with that is in Simon the character. Markiplier's character in this film is named Simon, and this is where the intricate lore and intricate design of the world building has one crucial element that I feel like misses the mark ever so slightly. Mark. And that is in Simon's backstory. And like I said, this could be something with the audio design where I missed out on crucial elements of Simon's backstory via the psychological stuff that was going on audibly. But I felt like Markiplier's acting was really good from the halfway point until the ending. But the first 50 minutes of the film, his acting wasn't really selling me on Simon the character compared to Markiplier the YouTuber, if that makes sense. So for the first half of the film, I felt like I was just watching Markiplier do things in a boat. And then the second half of the film, I was finally understanding that this is Simon the character doing things in a submarine where he's going to die. And I think that's the crucial connection you have to make with this movie. And as they're kind of expanding upon Simon's backstory throughout the film, I feel like there's a little bit of a caveat with the world building where Simon's backstory is not developed well enough to really get a grasp on him as a character, but also how what he did as a character plays into the overall world building of the Iron Lung universe. And I that sounds really confusing because I'm trying not to talk about spoilers and I don't want to break down the entire video game because that doesn't sound very interesting. So I'm going to leave it there, but just know that if you're looking for a film where the character that is the main focus is developed beyond what's actually happening to him in the moment, this movie might leave a little bit to be desired. I think it's good for what it tries to do, and like I said, in terms of video game adaptations, this knocks most other ones out of the park. But it does leave a little bit to be desired in that character growth department. Not character development, character growth. So there's that. That's pretty much all I have to say about Iron Lung, to be honest with you. I thought this movie was great. Like I said, visually, this movie is astonishing, and that's usually the main takeaway for me, is I love when movies are visually captivating. So it won me over with that alone. I think Markiplier's acting is solid enough. I think the cinematography is even better. And to be honest with you, I would be more interested to see Markiplier direct more movies than I would to see him act in more movies. If I saw another video game adaptation directed by Mark Fishbach that had some other actors playing in it, I'd be more interested to watch that. Also, quick side note, because I forgot to mention it and I wanted to. Other actors in this film, mainly Troy Baker, who don't get as big of a visual role, all do a fantastic job of being the voice over the intercom that's supposed to be kind of the opposing force to Markiplier's mission. So all of that's great. I really thought that was fantastic. And the last thing I want to say is the ending of this film, when they pick up the pace, is great, but the record that this movie broke of most fake blood used in a film was well deserved, and they do a really good job of making you actually see why that record was broken with this movie. So that's all I have to say about Iron Lung. I gave this one a 4-star out of 5, which translates to an 8 out of 10. I felt very confident with my 8 out of 10. It could move up to a 9 the more I think about it. This is the next day after I've slept on the movie, so I had a little bit more details to say about it. And I feel like if I watch this movie again at home with headphones on, I might boost this up to even a 9 out of 10 because there's so much depth and ingenuity to it that I feel like that sound design aspect from the theater missed out on. So that's all I've got to say about Iron Lung. I hope you all enjoyed. This one's a little bit longer than usual. Tomorrow there will be a Sin to Help review. I'm seeing that tonight. So be excited for that. I know it's a little late to the party because everybody else has already made one. So if it doesn't, do as well, I get it. But wanted to get that out there. So send help tomorrow night or tomorrow afternoon. And yep, that's going to do it for me. So I will see you all in the next one, and peace out.